Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy, NerdModon, and welcome to episode 8 of Sniper Sundays, a video series where I'll be using anything from DMRs to bolt-action sniper rifles and just kind of going over some information in relation to the item similar to a weapon review. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So today we're going to be looking at the Scar HSV. Now this is a weapon that I've already covered in a previous installation, however, in that installation I made it more of a long range to medium range setup. In this particular installation, we're going to be focusing more on the compactness of the weapon as well as the performance differences that it compares to when it comes to other weapons similar to itself. So of course, jumping right into the statistics of the weapon and kind of break it down for you guys to give you an idea of the performance that this weapon has when it comes to the battlefield. This weapon is going to be clocking in at 260 rounds per minute, which is on par with most of the DMRs. You usually don't see a ton of deviation there, but that's probably for the better. Now, of course, this weapon does have a 500 meters a second velocity, which is actually very impressive by itself. That means that you don't have to compensate as much for moving targets and or long distance targets, so that's definitely going to be in your benefit. Of course, it's not as good as a bolt action sniper rifle, but it's the next best thing when it comes down to the battlefield. So of course, transitioning your guys' eyes over to the damage model, you guys will notice that the maximum damage is 45 damage up until 15 meters, and then after 15 meters you'll see a gradual decline of the overall damage. It's not very steep, but it's definitely noticeable. And then of course, the minimum damage that this weapon does is 38 damage, and that point is left off at 80 meters. So definitely quite a bit of distance there to overall achieve a pretty consistent damage model. And then of course, after 80 meters, you will just be doing 38 damage all the way down the road. So it's definitely pretty powerful, and it's in your best interest to definitely try to hit the power points on the character, but as well as be a little bit more accurate and try not to spam it as quickly as you might in some other cases. Now, of course, let's talk a little bit about the reload speeds as well as the magazine size. So starting things off, you guys will notice that the reload speeds are pretty consistent and pretty quick when it comes down to the overall consistency of this weapon. So the short reload is clocking in at 1.85 seconds, which is actually pretty decent when it comes down to it, as well as the long reload only clocking in at 2.3 seconds. So definitely for the overall configuration of this weapon, it's going to be very nice to be able to constantly get right back into the action, and you're not even going to notice half of those reloads when it comes down to it. Now, of course, I'd like to let you guys know keeping one bullet in your chamber or in your magazine at all times is going to be most beneficial to you as a player, because you're only going to have to deal with the short reload then. So definitely try to keep one at least left in your magazine, and it's going to make you pretty consistent and overall a lot more beneficial on the battlefield when it comes down to the main gist of it. Now, of course, looking at the magazine size, you guys will notice that this weapon does have a 20 round magazine plus one in the chamber. You combine both of those together, of course, and you get 21 rounds total. And that's definitely a lot of ammunition for a DMR, and that's definitely a lot of killing potential when it comes down to the main gist of it. And finally, the last piece of information to talk about when it comes down to the statistics of the weapon is the recoil numbers. The recoil numbers are going to be the most prominent thing, especially when using this weapon, and it's going to be in your best interest to try to get down the statistics of it and try to get down the overall feel of the weapon so that you can be a very successful player. Now, of course, looking at the horizontal numbers, you guys will notice that this weapon has a left pole of negative 0.1 as well as a right pole of 0.3. So it's definitely going to be tending a little bit more to the right side, which is definitely pretty consistent with most weapons in the Battlefield franchise. But however, looking at the vertical side of things, you guys will notice that it has a vertical pole of 0.5. Now, of course, for DMRs, you're going to be commonly getting the first shot multiplier of ×2 every time you pull the trigger. So it's going to be in your best interest to get used to the weapon as well as trying to compensate for it. So how you would compensate for this particular case would be in pulling down and to the left, and that's going to make it a little bit easier to keep the crosshair in the middle of the screen as well as not have it deviate too far from the oppositional player, especially at medium to long range. Now, of course, if you guys are interested, I can definitely give you guys some customization recommendations so that you guys can better equip yourself on the battlefield. So of course, starting things off in the optics category, we're going to be focusing more as an aggressive recon in this particular build. We're not going to be focusing on long range or medium range action. We're going to be trying to get as close to the opposition as humanly possible, as well as suppressing the opposition with our huge magazine and high rate of fire. So that's definitely going to be very beneficial, and plus the DMRs do have a very distinguishable noise that many players hate, and that could really get their blood temperature boiling, so that's definitely a benefit to bring to the table. So this time around, we're going to be focusing on the red dot sights. I had a lot of success using the Coyote because of the overall frame of it is a lot more slim in comparison to the Reflex, but of course if you want to go the most slim frame that the optics have to offer, then of course the Cobra might be in your best interest. But going along with that overall theme, you could definitely use anything that could be a hollow sight, a Coyote, or really any of the red dot sights that don't have a huge magnification that try to stay around that 1x optic. That way you're being able to see the opposition as well as not have the frame or the overall scope blinding your surroundings. So of course, transitioning into the accessories tab, I'm going to recommend going with the laser sight, considering that I always have a lot of success using these particular attachments, and it always gives you ability to turn them off if you're really somebody that doesn't want to make your position known, or in some cases, it can definitely be beneficial if somebody happens to catch you off guard, and considering that you are using a DMR, you are able to spam the trigger a little bit faster than some other weapons that maybe don't have those capabilities. Now, of course, taking a look at the barrel attachment, I'm going to recommend going with a suppressor or a flash hider depending on how you wish to play the game. I have a lot of luck using the suppressor, considering that most veteran players of the Battlefield franchise tend to look at their minimap as if it's the only importance to the series. And with that in mind, of course, you not popping up gives you a huge advantage over those kind of players that really focus heavily on the minimap and maybe not as much on the actual sounds. So in that case, it's going to be very beneficial for you to get behind the opposition, kill lots of players without being noticed or seen in many cases, and that's definitely something that I enjoy. However, if you're somebody that really doesn't care for that kind of a playstyle, then of course going with a flash hider is going to be your next best option, considering that there is no negative side effects and it only has benefits. So that's definitely going to be very beneficial when it comes down to the main gist of it, especially when it comes down to alleviating muzzle flash. And finally, of course, looking at the underbarrel attachments, I always have a lot of success with the DMR category using something similar to an angled grip, considering that it decreases your first shot recoil, which is always going to be the most prominent recoil that you have every single time you pull the trigger, and in those cases, definitely making that recoil a little bit less is always going to be very beneficial when it comes down to it. However, if you're somebody that's really good at long range accuracy, you never really have used an angled grip and you never found a reason for it, then of course going with this stubby grip is going to be your next best option, considering that it's going to tighten the spread and make you a lot more accurate at those long to medium range engagements. But anyway guys, that has been all the information when it comes down to breaking down the Scar HSV. Now of course, if you guys would like me to do a weapon in the future, of course consider leaving recommendations in the comments below. And other than that guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and until then, I'll see you next time, and this is NMO, and I'm going to be signing out. Peace.